had this thing and nobody understood what I was saying, but it's because Twitter makes me condense. But the reason there's a problem here is they didn't come out and say it's a choice.
Yep.
If they had said it's a choice, we really recommend you make this choice, but it's your choice, then it was a scientific statement, and it wasn't it didn't get into crossing moral boundaries. But by mandating it, what they did is they made it a moral issue. Well, people will naturally double down on moral issues, right? Because now you're not talking about the disease, you're talking about the foundation of our ability to live together.
Yep.
And so they made it a violation of it's the foundation of our ability to live and work together. So in other words, once it's moral, once it's a moral question, it's not a scientific question. Yeah. In this case, they made it a moral question, and the science isn't strong enough to convert it to something else. Okay. So I guess I'm sorry if I lose people.
No, it's great. It's great. I really, really appreciate it. I think my next question was, is there any, when I say the word moral, I'm saying natural law, reciprocity.
Yeah.
So is there any moral basis under natural law to force people like me to be excluded from society?
I don't know what that means.
Okay.
If you say society, from the commons, I don't know. From a given workplace, that's not a government decision, right? It's very difficult to make that claim. The problem is that by saying it's an employer decision, you've now simply acted in an evasive manner, on both ends. So
we have anti-discrimination laws, and the law will come down if you said, I'm excluding black people from this workplace. That's not, the private company argument doesn't work there. And so if you want to stay consistent with that standard,
there's no problem with consistency on the left. There's no intellectual consistency.
I'm talking theoretically in a proprietary polity.
If you are a carrier of something here's the point I said we should talk about in this conversation, is because when any question of law, the way it works is you develop a standard, just standard of weights and measures. Mm-hmm. In realistic terms, this means a checklist. A checklist of reciprocity is that any exchange is productive. In other words, it's not harmful. Mm-hmm. Right? That it's fully informed. Mm-hmm. In other words, that you're given the truth sufficient to make a decision on matter. Voluntary is that it's not unproductive, in other words, it's harmful. It's not deceitful, in other words, it's fully informed, and it's voluntary. You took the action voluntarily. Mm-hmm. But then you get into the criteria, which is it warrantable, the warrantyable, right? Can they warranty that they've said what they've said is productive, fully informed, and voluntary? Is it reversible? In other words, if they warrant it, is it reversible? Can they correct it? And if it's not reversible, is it restitutable? The problem with this question, and is it free of extra imposition of costs upon the demonstrated interests of others by externality? Mm-hmm. So that's the test of reciprocity. And so you simply go through the checklist and say, is this true? Well, the problem is, can you be fully informed? Nobody's fully informed.
Yep.
Right? Is it productive? Well, it's an insurance. So in that sense, it's probably a productive question. It's not an unproductive question. But the problem is, once they make it involuntary, now it's blackmail.
Yeah.
And so now it's Now it's not productive, right? It's unproductive. So is it warrantable? No. Is it reversible? No.
Yeah. No.
Is it restitutable? No. So the problem is you can't make the claim that this meets the legal standard of positive enforceability. The second thing is that the law doesn't do that. It says you may not. It doesn't say you must. So in this case, the way you'd have to frame it is you may not be a carrier that exposes other people to risk in the commons. Well, that's great. That don't expose others to risk, right? I mean, so like I said, for me as a writer living on my own, I don't expose anybody to risk. However, if I worked in a restaurant or a nursing home or a hospital, I might. But even then, go ahead.
I want to really make this clear. So we've established that it's immoral, breaks reciprocity, it's immoral under natural law to impose something on me that I don't want, but it's also, and a lot of people that talk to me won't probably like hearing this, but you're also saying that it's also immoral to export to risk to other people as well.
Correct.
So if I was a carrier...
That's why it's a hard problem.
Yeah.
We wouldn't maybe having this discussion if it wasn't a hard problem.
Yeah. So if I was a carrier of a deadly disease and I went into a workplace and put other people at risk, that's immoral as well. And so...
Correct.
So then it comes down to...
The problem is we can't claim this is a deadly disease.
Yeah, yeah. And
we can say it's only circumstantially deadly, and that it's possible to narrow the problem of it. You have nurses that don't want to be shot because they know the question, they know the issue, and they don't want to be shot, yet they work in the freaking hospital zone, and they're not catching COVID. It's just because they have the sufficient discipline not to catch it.
As for a specific workplace, they could easily just to say, well, I've got 95 young, fit, healthy employees and 5 old, fragile ones. Well, I'll just get rid of the fragile ones because then they're the ones that
Correct.
If they could go either way, it's like, okay, if you might carry it in and expose someone at risk in a workplace, but if they're going to get you fired because they're an at-risk person, it kind of goes both ways.
Yep. So again, if this wasn't a 0.0 whatever survival, death rate, and if it didn't require to pretty much be over 80, right, and it already fragile, like my mother, right? My mother died from the fucking shot, right? She would have died in 6 months anyway.
Yeah.
Right, but she did die from the shot. Well, that wasn't their choice to make. That might have been her choice and mine to pay for the cost of keeping her inside until she died naturally, right? But I mean,
at what scale is separation morally required? Is the question clear?
Because if people will make the voluntary choice to do it, then it's severe enough. In other words, the market can calculate this really easily. Yep. If you were given the choice that if you were in a risky category to get half salary by the government, well, it figured out and the rest of us didn't. Others got full salary to continue our words. The problem is you can't insure somebody against an irreversible and unrestitutable. Mm-hmm. They can't insure you against the harms that this thing can cause.
Yeah.
And you're willing to self-insure against the harms it would cause to you. And the science that you can become a carrier that's crap. Anybody can be it. So that's just not as serious a thing. If they want to keep getting jabs, fine.